Today on the Snack Covenant.
Lawrence and his associates decide to contact a Great One, because Lawrence wants all that Great One knowledge. And he's like, okay, how do we get this? I've got it. We need a baby.
This episode is part of a Patreon-only series, but there was a good part, which is why it is available on YouTube. For the full episode, please visit patreon.com/SinclairLore.
Hi, Sophie.
Hi, Sin.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Bus episode 001, which stands for Sketchy NPC Arenas.
So all those people who were leaving comments that were like, oh, over the years you've really improved. This is us dragging ourselves back to like 2018.
The first location we will talk about is the Dolls Arena.
What do you mean by arena? Because you don't actually fight it.
I asked myself the same question, and I decided to go with the most scientific, reliable, and validated measure. When it is an NPC that we do not fight, its arena is the space within a 5-meter diameter.
Okay.
5-meter radius.
Radius.
Yeah, I meant radius. Science, huh?
Don't let your work hear this. Yeah, I meant radius. Science, huh?
Late at night, I think of you. Your vision floods my mind.
The Hunter's Dream is based on a real location in the waking world. So when you ask, why is something there?
Yeah.
It was probably put there twice. It was put there once in the waking world by whoever left it there. But then it was put there again by the Moon Presence, when the Moon Presence recreated the space. But some things will only be in one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So those headstones near the doll,
Yeah.
those were not there in the waking world. But there's like a treasure chest in the waking world that's not there in the dream.
Right. So it's kind of like, Marvel has parallel universes or whatever, and some of them have some things and others don't, and they kind of diverge. They could diverge like more and more, depending on what's happening.
You should have been in Doctor Strange. This multiverses are all different. Some change, I don't know.
1 hour later.
Okay, let me ask you a quick question. A quick
Jesus
diversion
Christ.
question. So, just the Hunter's Dream, right?
Yes.
Can you please tell me how it was created?
Okay. What the game says about the Hunter's Dream, basically Lawrence and his associates, presumably Gurman, because we haven't seen anyone else there, they beckoned the Moon Presence, and the Moon Presence conceived the Hunter's Dream.
Yes.
And what beckoned the Moon Presence is the third umbilical cord that is found on the altar in the waking world. So, they've got some umbilical cord on the altar. Asterisk, not a real umbilical cord. It's there. And then Moon Presence shows up and is like, and creates from the place that she was summoned this like little facsimile dream of the place she was summoned. So it's just the workshop and it's floating in this sort of unformed sea.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple of little differences with the workshop. Like some bits are missing, some bits have been added, but it's basically the same. So that is how the dream was created, according to literally just like the stuff that's written in the game.
Yeah.
If you want to get super like into where the baby came from and what exactly went on, why they were doing it, you have to make a bunch of other connections to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's within the purview of this episode that is now 50 minutes long.
It is.
Okay. So this is all really relevant to the 5-meter radius around the doll, which is mostly brick. So, in version 1.0 of the game, right, it mentions on that umbilical cord this was taken from the child of the Vile Bloods, as in it was taken from Cainhurst. That's patched out in subsequent versions. Even if, like, you say, okay, that line doesn't count, and, like, fair enough, that line doesn't count anymore. The implication is still very strongly that Lawrence is behind, like, what happened at Cainhurst in order to get the child.
Yeah.
So they mention, like, a scholar of Bergenworth is the one that brought the blood to Cainhurst. Lawrence is a scholar of Bergenworth.
Yes.
So what's happening in Cainhurst is kind of like recent history, like the idea of like the Vile Bloods and everything, that comes from Old Blood being reintroduced into the Cainhurst bloodline by someone.
Yeah.
If you look at the portraits in Cainhurst Castle, there is one portrait of a man who has kind of like shoulder-length grey hair and a beard. And if you look at what he's wearing, he has 2 pendants on. One is the wheel badge that the church wear. It's like a little like Buddhist sort of wheel of life. So that marks him, okay, this is someone from the church. He's also wearing, it's a little confusing because again, like the game went through all these revisions, but he's wearing clerical robes. They don't initially read as clerical robes because they're red. But if they were black, they would, and I think that's just because they changed the color of the church's robes during the game's development. Also, I think they were probably red because they were trying to make him look like a cardinal, like the way cardinals wear red.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So, and the other thing he's wearing is this pendant, this like gold round pendant that looks a lot like Lawrence's pendant that Amelia's holding. Also worth pointing out that like in the Research Hall Nightmare, there's like this big statue of a figure who is overseeing an operation.
Yeah.
And he's the only statue in that little sort of like, what would you call it? Like that little sort of like the altar, basically. He's the only statue with a face.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like clearly this is supposed to be an actual person, and the other ones are symbolic. And he's the figure who is leading everything, and I'm like, okay, probably Lawrence, because who else would be leading the church? Yeah. It's got to be Lawrence. And he also has like it's short. He has a beard. It's a little longer, but he has the beard. So, what you end up with is this situation like, okay, Lawrence was... We're saying it's Lawrence, by the way. You may have left that part out. The point about the portrait is that, okay, even if you don't buy it's Lawrence, it's clearly someone from the church.
Yeah.
The church were initially on good terms with Cainhurst. Because someone from there is, like, seen as, like, okay, you're so important to us, we're going to, like, actually have a portrait of you put up in our dining room.
Yeah.
So they're an important figure in Cainhurst history. So the idea of, like, the church went to purge Cainhurst because their blood was wrong is, I think, a deliberate, like, piece of propaganda that Alfred believes. Because Alfred is, like, way too young. If you look at... I know, like, there's arguments over the timeline, but, like, Alfred is very young. Alfred has never been to Cainhurst. Alfred never met Ligarius.
No.
What I'm getting at is there's a line he has when he talks to you. He's like, oh, you're a hunter. That's how I started. So the implication is, like, Alfred is actually someone who just came to Yharnam. And when he was there, he sort of, like, bought into this, like, cult around, like, Ligarius in the church.
Yeah.
Okay. So when Alfred says, like, the Cainhurst Vile Bloods, like, they had to be eliminated because of their horrible blood, he's repeating something that he heard.
Yeah.
So this is where we're getting at, like, this is why I'm saying this, because it looks like this is a deliberate piece of storytelling, which is, like, you meet the guy who said Cainhurst. Cainhurst are the enemies of the church. They had this vile, disgusting blood. And someone from Bergenworth is responsible for it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not wrong. He just doesn't have all the information, because you get there, and it's like, okay, but actually the one that brought the blood there in the first place was the guy who founded the church. It's like the punchline to the joke, like you've set it up.
Yeah.
Someone from Bergenworth creates this like monster that the church has to destroy. Oh, it was the church. They're the ones who created it. Right.
Yeah.
So, Lawrence is also aware of what happened at the fishing hamlet. He knows that you need the child of a great one to beckon like a great one. He understands all these concepts, and he understands he needs his own third chord because Willem has a third chord from the Orphan of Cos.
Yeah. Yes.
And Lawrence is also very aware that, like, well, what did we do last time we wanted to get a third chord? Is, well, we ingratiated ourselves into this civilization that had links to the Great Ones. And then when the time was right, we basically subcontracted a paramilitary force to come in and kill them all so we could take the child. That's what happens in the Hamlet, and then later on in Lawrence's life, he ingratiates himself into Cainhurst. He brings them the blood. I don't think they explicitly ever say that a child was born, but the point is, like, Annalise, like, something happened to it. They talk about Annalise wanting to conceive.
Yeah.
That's what she wants blood dregs for, so one day she will have a child.
Yes.
So he ingratiates himself into there, he gives them the old blood, it sort of reactivates that old Thumerian, like, whatever you want to call it, Thumerian heritage.
Thumerian gene.
Yeah. And then when it's time to get the child, instead of calling the hunters, he calls the executioners.
Yeah.
And they go in there, they sack the place, they take the child. And that's how Lawrence gets the child. Okay. And that's what he's into back in the Moon Presence.
Yeah. And so the Moon Presence arrives, and she's like, thanks so much for the baby. I appreciate it.
Oh my god, a baby!
But the thing is, I'm guessing Lawrence doesn't necessarily understand the ritual. Something happens to the baby during this creation of the workshop.
No, I think the baby's already dead.
Wait, the baby's already dead?
Well, they're using an organ from inside the baby.
Oh no.
To do the ritual. The baby's long dead.
Oh no, he killed the baby? I thought, oh my god. Lawrence? So wait a minute. The Moon Presence shows up, and Lawrence is like, I got a surprise for you. And the Moon Presence is like, oh my god, he got me a baby. Here's your hunter's dream. Where's my baby? Here's your cord. And she's like, I wanted a baby. This is not a baby. And then Lawrence has to be like, well, yeah. He's like, well, you know what? I'll fix this. How? Well, I'm gonna go get you another baby from the catacombs?
Yeah, that's essentially what happens.
In the meantime, have this old man baby.
Do you think he dressed Gurman up in, like, a diaper and, like, a pacifier? He's like, here's the baby you asked for. Don't look too hard. I'll be back soon.
Oh my god, but this, I don't know why. Sophie, I thought the baby they used were alive and some accident happened.
No, well, I did too.
Oh my god. Lawrence. Oh my god.
No, but, like, that's what happens with Orphan of Cos, that, like, he is, like, they don't want, like, they want the organ that's inside the baby.
Why didn't they just take the baby? Like,
well, because they make a point of, like, the Great One's children always die. So, like, the child might have just died during childbirth. Like, you don't know. The whole point is that when the Great Ones have children, the child dies.
Okay, counterpoint. People keep killing their kids. Keep stealing and killing their kids. Maybe the problem is that we humans keep finding pregnant Great Ones and, like, killing their babies. Maybe they'll be fine if we leave them alone. Sorry, I'm still appalled at Lawrence's behavior.
Now, it's been 8.5 years. Extremely long trial. Right, no, they want the cord that's in the baby. Because what happens is, like, that organ, it's not literally an umbilical cord, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's called the umbilical cord because it's the organ that links the mother and the child. Or the father and the child in Odin's case. Like, the Great One's sex is sort of, like, indeterminate. It links the parent and the child.
Yeah.
So, when you have that organ, the Great Ones are drawn to the organ. it's like you have like a little like great one come here. It's like a lure because it's like, oh, that's child, and they're drawn to it.
Yeah.
That's not the same thing as like the child actually being like being alive. But also like if you think about like Murgo or like the Orphan of Cos, they're physically dead in game, but their spirit survives.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So the kid probably like may have died at Cainhurst.
Mm-hmm.
May also have been a squid. We don't
Yeah,
know.
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird because like Ariana's baby is a squid.
Yeah.
Murgo, from what we can tell, actually does just look like a human fetus.
Yeah, from The Rock.
Yeah, and like Orphan of Cos, you actually see like you can see the sort of black snake thing that rises out of the corpse.
The shadow or whatever.
Yeah, that this is only like really noticeable if you've looked at the graphics like in a model viewer. But what happens is it starts off like curled up in a spiral. And it sort of like uncurls to become that. But when it's in the spiral, it looks like a developing fetus. Like when like a fetus first starts developing and it's like connected to the cord and everything. It's like this sort of looks like a worm with a head. Yeah. Yeah.
Like the okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, were you about to continue something?
No, I'm just amazed it's a fucking hour into NPC arenas of Bloodborne. It's become like the lore of Lawrence, who's not there.
Episode 001. But you mentioned something and it gave me a little vision. You know, speaking of slugs.
Next time we do one of these, I want a hard limit of 1 hour per location, okay? 1 hour is going to be long enough to cover a 10-meter diameter circle, which in the case of the doll is bricks and grass. In the case of Eileen, it's some dirt. In the case of Alfred, it's some stone and it's an episode we already did. You can just edit that in. Yep. You haven't thought this through.
No, Sophie. Speaking of
several
slugs,
characters are in the same location.
Sophie, speaking of slugs.
1 hour later.
Sometimes I listen to the Ludwig theme and I just get so overwhelmed with emotions because it's just so good. The theme is so good. The fight is so good. Everything is so good. It's overwhelming.
Okay, but what if, when Ludwig landed, he did an extremely damaging area of effect attack that was almost impossible to avoid if you were next to him, but you had to be next to him to hurt him? What if he did backflips? What if every time he hit you, it inflicted a status effect that caused your hit points to go down? There's no way of curing it because it wasn't poison. It just hit you and your health went down. You couldn't stop it.
1 hour later.
I love Bloodborne so much. I can't.
Oh yeah, I noticed because it's been an hour and 13 minutes and 48 seconds. And you've talked about everything in Bloodborne but the topic because you have so much to say. In stark contrast to another game that came out recently.
1 hour later.
Who constructed this arena?
Whoever built the Hunter's Dream. No, but like, are we talking about going back? I don't want to risk bringing this up because it'll go for another hour. But are you talking about like, is the answer the moon presence because the moon presence made the Hunter's Dream, or is the answer the architect of the building that the Hunter's Dream is based on?
Let me ask you a non-trick question. Who built the workshop?
Okay, so we've talked about this a little bit before, about how the workshop is clearly a chapel. Like, it's got an altar and everything, and like the layout of it is like a chapel. And it's located like, you don't really get a sense of it. It depends on where you look at it from.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of located in a graveyard.
Mm-hmm,
This is very confusing because they seem to have moved it at some point, but if you look at it from outside, like say you're on the workshop, like the workshop tower, or you're near Huggle and you look toward it, it's in a little graveyard. There's like a little path leading to it with these gravestones, but then when you actually go there, that's not there.
What purpose did the location originally serve?
This is where I was getting at. Like,
Yes.
I don't think it was a workshop to begin with.
It was a chapel.
I think it was a chapel because it's designed like a chapel.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, in the same way that like the Healing Church set up their like lab in a church.
Their scientific lab. I have things to say. We'll talk about that in the Lawrence episode.
Yeah, the Lawrence episode. It's gonna be fun. I think surely this was the Lawrence episode. No.
So Sophie, this was a chapel.
Yes.
But when the moon presence copy-pasted it into the dream world,
Yeah.
was she thinking like, I'm gonna make a chapel? Was she thinking like, this is gonna be a thing? Or was she just
But
like
something that
copy-pasting?
we brought up ages ago is like, when you do go down there and you see like the moon, the red moon,
Yes.
it's huge in that area and really nowhere else. Like it takes up about like half the sky. It's absolutely massive.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder like, well, why did they perform the ritual there? And we know already that there's a place called Erden Chapel that was like a chapel that was dedicated to the worship of Erden.
Yeah.
And we also know that like the moon presence, like it has something to do with the hunters.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if like
we
it was
see her sign in the labyrinth.
if it was a chapel to the moon presence, like way back in the same way they had.
Oh my god, my love! You know, as you're saying that, the doll when she
the doll. That's right. That was what the episode's about.
She's like, oh, Flora, and there are the flowers, and Flora is actually also a name of a moon presence, and they have moon presence flowers around the chapel.
Yeah. And the doll's got flowers in her hair, and Yharnam's got flowers in her dress and flowers on her shoes, and there's flowers that grow in the Chalice dungeons.
Yeah, so it's like, it is like, what you're saying makes so much sense.
They specify that some flowers grow from blood.
I feel like we've talked about this before, but sometimes I forget.
How unusual!
But
90 minutes!
No, because there's just so many details in this game, and they're so beautiful. Sometimes I forget some of them, but it's true. We did talk about the fact that this could be a chapel, and sometimes we actually just talk without recording, you know?
I wish we were doing that now.
But
I just want to remind you of this is what happened last night.
Yes. Oh no, yes.
You said I was going to do Malekith, and you said no, we'll do what, where, why, like NPC locations. Sorry, sketchy NPC arenas. We'll do that, and we'll do it on cams because it'll be quick and it'll be easy to edit. So it'll just be the two of us talking. I'll have it done by the next day, and this is now longer than the audio of the St. Trina episode I just edited, which took me like an entire week to finish. That also had quite a lot of information in it that I didn't want to cut out.
Sophie, would you forget one little thing? I'm a crazy person. I can get this done.
We forget this.
So we actually answered the next question already. What happened in between those times? And, you know, there was the workshop, the baby sacrifices, a lot of things happened, but we talked about them. So what we say is actually part of the outline. We're just so good, we already answered that question.
This is like the president can declassify documents by thinking about it. Like, that's the level that we're currently operating on.
No, Sophie, last question.
Yes.
How will this location be used in the future?
That depends on the ending we get. So if we get Yharnam Sunrise, another hunter will show up. And they'll go through the same thing we went through.
Or the same hunter shows up again.
That is very confusing, yeah. Also, when I say the same thing that we went through, I don't mean that literally the events of the game repeat in an endless cycle, which some people believe. Because, like, at this point, like, the next time a hunter shows up... Like, this is a thing about Bloodborne that, like, was initially sort of confusing. Is, like, the hunt, as in, like, the hunt, is something that happens, like, on and off. Like, it happens regularly. But what we go through when we're there is like a unique one because we happen to be hunting on the night that the Menses ritual happens. And also, like, by the next hunt that happens, like, the church will be gone because everyone's dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. If we get the Honoring Wishes ending, it will happen again, but we'll be German.
Yeah.
And we'll be with the doll, and she'll push us around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The doll is very sweet.
She is.
But you know what, though, Sophie? We'll be German, but Lawrence is dead. We're never getting out.
No, you got it. It's not a good ending.
Unless somebody defeats us, but then they become the new German.
Yeah, it's as
So
if you're in a
sad.
cycle. Yeah.
Yes.
And that brings us to the third thing it could be used for in the future,
Okay.
which is that if we ascend to being a great one, the dream will just stay there, but people won't be sucked into it like before because, like, the moon presence is gone and everything. So, like, go on.
Oh. Counterpoint.
Certainly.
You're assuming that the little slug is going to grow up into a beautiful slug who cannot tell a lie. What if we grow up and we're like really mean and we're even worse than the moon presence? What if we're like
does this
trapping
look like a
everybody
mean
there?
person? Could this be mean to you?
No, you're right. I'm being ridiculous.
Yes.
Look how cute.
Very cute. This
Very
came from
cute.
Spain.
Oh, how? When did you go to Spain?
I didn't. I was like, I went, I think, I'll buy a sensory slug. I went on eBay, and I just, like, arranged by price lowest, and it was in Spain. And I just bought it, and I'm like, wait, this is in Spain. And it took, like, 3 months to arrive, and I'm like, they sell them at the shop in the corner. It's like $1 more expensive, so I saved $1 by waiting. So, if we get that ending, it just stays there. The thing about, like, this is, again, like, it's done through implication. It doesn't outright say it, but, like, that's sort of clearly what is happening. Like, when you watch the processes unfold, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
The Hunter's Nightmare, right? It's like this... It's, like, stacked when you go there. There's, like, Hunter's Nightmare's at the bottom, and then the research hall, and then there is the fishing hamlet. And then you can see that the masts of the fishing hamlet go up, and then when you're in the Nightmare Frontier, the masts are visible there.
Yes.
So it's like
perfect.
above the fishing hamlet's Nightmare Frontier. So what's going to happen, presumably, is, like, when the next, like, cycle happens, what they call the next childhood, when that happens, the Hunter's Nightmare will be, like, the Nightmare Frontier of, like, the next cycle. So, like, someone will... Like, I've talked about this before, but, like, the Nightmare of Menses, it looks like... Like, they make a big deal about the Nightmare of Menses used to be Lauren.
Yeah.
Which is, like, a place... It was, like, the place that was afflicted before Yharnam. And if you look at the Nightmare of Menses, like, the Nightmare of Menses is... it's got this big structure in it that looks like a church.
Yeah.
And because they keep going on about, like, cycles and everything, it's like, oh, okay, the people of Lauren, like, they explicitly did have, like, a medical church. It's like, oh, the people of Lauren, they, like, had the same thing Yharnam had. They had a church. They tried to encounter the Great Ones. It all went wrong and it was destroyed. So from that, you're like, okay, that was destroyed and that left behind the Nightmare Frontier. So what happened to Yharnam is the same thing, and Yharnam leaves behind the Hunter's Nightmare. So in the next childhood of humanity, they're going to go, like, there's going to be more people who are, like, astral projecting and exploring and trying to figure out how the world works, and they'll find the Hunter's Nightmare. They won't know it is the Hunter's Nightmare, and they won't know it is Yharnam, because it's, like, a completely different civilization. And they won't know what it is, and they'll be, oh, that's our Nightmare Frontier. Yeah. So presumably, like, the Hunter's Dream will, like, be floating part of there. Like, someone's going to find the Hunter's Dream at some point. I'm not going to know what it is. 1 hour, 44 minutes.
And 15 seconds.
Yeah, I'm just going back. Thank you. That's such a, like, and 15 seconds. Actually.
Hi, Ingrid. How are you doing? Look at her.
So I'm looking at my map now of the area we're discussing. Yep.
Yes.
I think we covered all of it. I think we did well.
Sophie, do the outro.
That was Sketchy Indie Series of Bloodborne, Episode 1, Dr. Sin
001.
Medicine Woman. The timer is currently 1 hour, 47 minutes, and 52 seconds.
Accurate?
Sin insisted that we do this on camera because it would be easier to edit.
It would be fast and easy.
Yep.
Because it would be a short episode.
Yep. This is called being hoisted by your own petard.
Is this what Lauren smells like?
I don't think he would have admitted it.
No, he's like, I got it. I know what I have to do this time.
Yep.
I'm gonna have to find a pregnant woman in the dungeons to steal a baby. That's where I went wrong. I did it above ground. We gotta go below.
He's like on the phone, like, I just need you to find me one more baby. We're just short one, can you get me a baby?
Oh my god. Well, thank you, Sophie.
Don't fucking release this.
And thank you everyone for listening. And see you next time.
I'm sorry, I tried to stop it.
Bye!
Bye.